I never imagined my life would unravel because of a single piece of paper. A document folded neatly inside a weathered envelope, buried deep in my mother's old cedar chest. That chest had always carried the faint smell of lavender, cedar shavings, and time itself, as though it held not just keepsakes, but echoes of every secret my family had whispered into the dark. I had no reason to open it, no reason to dig into the past, until grief drove me there like a moth to flame. I was 38 when my mother passed away, an age that feels both too old to still need your mother and far too young to lose her. I had stood beside her hospital bed, my hands gripping hers even as her fingers grew colder, whispering apologies for things I hadn't even done, because guilt and love can get tangled like that. I'm her eldest daughter, the one who always carried her burdens when she grew too tired, the one who skipped school dances to help her fold laundry, the one who thought love was supposed to feel like sacrifice. People often said I looked like her, though I never believed it. She was all softness, high cheekbones, and almond eyes that seemed to know more than she let on. I was sharper, more guarded, as though life had etched edges into me. Still, I'd spent my whole life wanting to be enough for her, wanting her to look at me and see her reflection. Instead, I always felt like a cracked mirror she never quite wanted to hang on the wall. The day after her funeral, the house felt like a tomb. My younger brother, Eric, was already talking about practical matters: the house, the accounts, the division of things. He was impatient, like grief was an obstacle to get past, not something to sit inside of. That was always his way. He was her golden child, the one who could fail and still be forgiven, the one who broke rules and got second chances while I held everything together. I should have hated him for it, but mostly I just envied the ease with which he was loved. I wandered into her bedroom, needing some kind of anchor. The cedar chest sat in its usual place at the foot of her bed, the same one she'd told us never to touch. My private things, she used to say with a gentle firmness that brooked no argument. I'd always assumed it held photographs, letters, maybe trinkets from the life she had before us. The weight of loss pressed against my chest as I knelt before it. My hands shook as I turned the small brass key still hanging on the chain she used to wear around her neck. The chest groaned open like something alive. Inside were stacks of yellowed letters tied with faded ribbons, a few brittle Polaroids, and a quilt my grandmother had sewn decades ago. Buried beneath them was an envelope, thicker than the rest, stamped with the word will in my mother's familiar cursive. My heart stuttered. I hadn't even known she'd written a will. She had always said she owned little, that there wasn't much to leave behind. I sat on the carpet, my legs numb, staring at the envelope like it was a trap. When I tore it open, the air shifted. My mother's words, typed neatly on heavy paper, stared back at me, and my world tilted. She had left everything: the house, the savings, even her jewelry, to a woman I had never heard of. A stranger. The name on the page was Sylvia Martin. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake, a cruel joke. But my mother's signature was unmistakable, scrawled at the bottom in her sweeping hand. I read it once, twice, 10 times, my chest tightening with each repetition. All my sacrifices, all the nights I stayed up nursing her through her illnesses, all the dreams I had deferred so I could be the good daughter, and in the end, none of it mattered. She had left her entire life to someone who wasn't me, wasn't us, wasn't family. I crumpled against the bed, clutching the will to my chest, my tears staining the ink. My brother's voice drifted from downstairs, muffled through the floorboards, calling my name. I couldn't answer him. How could I tell him that our mother had betrayed us in the most final way possible? When I finally stumbled downstairs, the will still clutched in my hand. Eric looked at me with irritation. "What's wrong with you?" he snapped, but his eyes flicked to the paper and his expression shifted as he read the words. His jaw clenched. Who the hell is Sylvia Martin? I had no answer, only a gnawing rage clawing at the inside of my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my childhood bedroom staring at the ceiling. The silence broken only by the faint ticking of the old clock in the hallway. Betrayal burned through me. My whole life, I had believed love was earned. I had believed if I did enough, gave enough, bent enough, she would see me, choose me. But instead, she had left me empty-handed. In the days that followed, I became obsessed with the name. I searched through drawers, old address books, even her phone contacts, but there was no mention of Sylvia Martin anywhere. No photographs, no letters, no explanation. It was as though this woman existed only in the shadow of my mother's secrets. Eric wanted to hire a lawyer immediately to contest the will. He spat out the word fraud like it could undo our mother's choice. But beneath his fury, I saw something else fear. For once, he wasn't the favored one either. For once, he was just as disposable as I was. I couldn't shake the question that haunted me. Who was Sylvia to her? Why would she give her everything to someone who wasn't us? I started to dig deeper. I drove to the county records office, pulling every scrap of paper tied to my mother's name. I found hospital bills, property deeds, and one thin file that made my heart lurch: a birth certificate. Not mine, not Eric's, another child, born before me. The mother listed was my mother. The father's name was blank. The baby's name, Sylvia. The room spun. My hands went clammy. My mother had another daughter, a daughter she never told us about. I pressed my forehead against the cold metal counter, my breath coming in shallow gasps. A sister. All these years. I thought I was the first, the one who bore the weight of her expectations. But I wasn't even her first child. I wasn't even her only secret. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. It wasn't just that she'd left everything to a stranger. It was that the stranger wasn't a stranger at all. She was blood. She was family. She was the child my mother chose to hide. The one she chose in death, even if she had abandoned her in life. When I drove home that evening, the sunset smeared the sky in colors that felt mocking, too beautiful for the ruin inside me. Eric was waiting in the kitchen, his face pale as I slid the certificate across the table. He stared at it, then at me, his lips parted, but no words coming. For once, my brother had no answers. We sat in silence, the weight of the truth pressing down on us. Finally, he whispered, she lied to us our whole lives. I wanted to scream, to smash every plate in the house, to demand answers from the grave. But all I could do was sit there, trembling, as the truth settled into my bones. Our mother had built our family on a foundation of secrets, and now, those secrets were rising like ghosts to devour us. The days blurred together, but my anger stayed sharp, a blade I couldn't put down. Every memory I had of my mother was suddenly poisoned. I thought of the times she scolded me for lying, the way she'd say, "Trust is everything, darling. Once broken, it's gone forever." And yet, she had lived a lie so enormous it had swallowed our whole lives without us ever noticing. I found myself questioning everything. Was the tenderness she sometimes showed me real, or was it just guilt dressed up as love? Did she ever look at me and think of Sylvia, the daughter she gave away? The daughter she left everything to? Maybe I had only been a stand-in, a consolation prize for the child she couldn't have? I tried to bury myself in practicalities. Eric and I contacted a lawyer to begin the process of contesting the will, but the attorney only shook his head. The will was ironclad, dated, signed, notarized. It wasn't forged. My mother had known exactly what she was doing. The lawyer leaned back in his chair and said, "If this Sylvia Martin comes forward to claim the inheritance, there's little you can do, unless you prove undue influence or incapacity. The will stands." I left the office with a hollowness in my chest. Eric cursing under his breath beside me. He kept saying we needed to fight, but I could see the same dread coiling in him. We were powerless, but I wasn't ready to surrender. If my mother thought she could bury Sylvia in silence and then hand her the keys to our lives without explanation, she had underestimated me. I began searching for Sylvia. Nights bled into mornings as I scoured the internet, flipping through endless profiles and public records. It wasn't easy. The name was common, and I didn't even know where she lived. But after weeks of digging, I found a woman named Sylvia Martin living 2 towns over, roughly the right age. I drove there one Sunday, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I told myself I only wanted answers, but beneath that was something darker. I wanted to look this woman in the eye, this sister I never knew existed, and see what made her so worthy of everything I had been denied. Her house was modest, a white bungalow with blue shutters, neat flower beds lining the walkway. It was nothing like the grand revelation I expected, but my chest still throbbed with dread. I rang the doorbell, my heart racing like I was about to step into battle. The door opened, and there she was, Sylvia. My mother's eyes stared back at me from a stranger's face. She was taller than me, her hair streaked with gray, her smile cautious but kind. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It was like staring into a mirror warped by time and fate. "Yes," she asked, her voice soft but steady. My throat felt dry. I think I'm your sister." Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening. She stumbled back a step, and for a second, I thought she might slam the door. But instead, she whispered, "She told me you might come." Her words slammed into me. My mother had told her, my mother, who had spent her whole life pretending Sylvia didn't exist, had prepared her for my arrival. I stepped inside, the air heavy with the scent of vanilla candles. The walls were covered in photographs not of my mother, but of Sylvia's own family. Children, grandchildren, a life built without us. We sat in her living room, the silence taut, and then she began to speak. She gave me up when I was 19. She said she was too young, too scared, and her parents wouldn't allow her to keep me. I grew up in foster homes until I was adopted at 6. She found me again years later, when I was in my 20s. She said she wanted to explain, to make amends. My stomach turned. Amends. She never told us. She never told me. Her own daughter. All my life. I thought I was her everything. But it turns out I wasn't even her first choice. Sylvia flinched, tears pooling in her eyes. She said she couldn't tell you, that she didn't want to ruin your lives with her mistakes. She carried guilt every day for giving me up. She tried to be a good mother to you and your brother, but she never forgave herself. That's why she left everything to me. She thought it was the only way to finally make it right. The words cut like glass. I could almost hear my mother's voice in them, that familiar blend of guilt and justification. She hadn't left me nothing out of malice. She had done it out of love, twisted by shame. I wanted to scream, to rage against Sylvia, against my mother, against the cruel weight of a truth I never asked for. But as I looked at Sylvia's trembling hands, at the pain etched into her face, I saw a reflection of my own grief. She hadn't asked for this any more than I had. She was another casualty of my mother's secrets. Still, I couldn't forgive. Not yet. When I returned home, Eric was waiting, pacing the living room like a caged animal. I told him what I had learned, and his fury erupted. He punched the wall, his voice hoarse as he shouted about betrayal, about how our mother had destroyed us. But beneath his anger, I saw fear, the same fear gnawing at me, that we were unlovable, that no matter what we had done, it had never been enough. The weeks that followed were suffocating. Sylvia contacted us a few times, gently, almost apologetically, asking if we wanted to meet again, to talk. Eric refused outright. I ignored her messages, though late at night I would reread them, my heart aching with a strange mix of longing and rage. Then the letter arrived. It was addressed to me in my mother's handwriting, the envelope sealed and fragile as though it had been waiting for years. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a letter written just before her death. Her words were shaky but deliberate. My darling girl, if you are reading this, then you have discovered the truth. I am sorry for the pain my silence has caused you. I was young when I had Sylvia, and fear ruled me. I thought giving her away was the only way to protect her, but it broke me in ways I never spoke of. When I had you and Eric, I promised myself I would be better, and you, my sweet, have been my greatest joy. Please do not think I loved you less. I left Sylvia what I could not give her in life, a piece of me, a piece of my home. But my love for you has always been beyond measure. Forgive me if you can. If not now, then someday. The paper blurred as tears spilled down my cheeks. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But forgiveness felt like a mountain too high to climb. I folded the letter and pressed it against my heart, feeling the weight of generations of silence pressing down on me. I had lived my whole life trying to earn love, and even now, even in death, my mother was still teaching me that love was not something to be earned. It was something messy, flawed, broken, and sometimes cruel. The letter haunted me. I carried it everywhere, tucked into the pocket of my jacket like a talisman, though it offered no comfort. It was a paradox, words meant to soothe that instead cut deeper. She said she loved me, that I had been her joy. Yet she gave everything tangible, everything real, to Sylvia. Love, when not backed by action, feels like another kind of betrayal. Eric didn't even want to read it. I placed the envelope in his hands, and he tossed it onto the table as though it were poison. I don't need her excuses, he spat. She chose. That's all that matters. He drowned himself in bitterness, snapping at me, ignoring Sylvia's attempts to reach out, burying himself in alcohol. I knew it was his way of grieving, but his anger became unbearable to be around. I, on the other hand, turned inward. My nights stretched long as I sat in my mother's bedroom, staring at the cedar chest that had detonated our lives. Sometimes I spoke to the shadows, as if she could hear me, asking her why, demanding answers she would never give. But slowly, another emotion grew in me. Not just grief, not just rage, something colder, a desire for revenge. It wasn't logical. What good would revenge do when my mother was already gone? But my fury needed a place to go, and it found its mark in Sylvia. She was the one who now stood to inherit everything. She was the one who had been chosen over me. Whether or not it was her fault didn't matter. She would reap the rewards of a life I had sacrificed to build alongside my mother, and I couldn't stomach it. I began plotting. I told myself it was justice, not vengeance, that she hadn't earned it, that I was simply restoring balance. But deep down, I knew I wanted her to feel what I felt: discarded, unseen, betrayed. The first step was information. I returned to her town, parking a few houses down from her bungalow, watching as her life unfolded. She had a quiet existence, 2 grown children who visited often, a husband who tended the garden, neighbors who greeted her warmly. She taught piano lessons out of her living room, her students scampering up the walkway with eager faces. From the outside, it was an ordinary, happy life. And that enraged me more. How dare she have peace when I was crumbling? How dare she hold the promise of my mother's legacy while I was left picking up broken pieces? I contacted the lawyer again, pressing for any angle we could exploit. He was patient, but firm. The will was airtight. Contesting it would only waste money. Unless Sylvia voluntarily relinquished the inheritance, it was hers. So I shifted my approach. If I couldn't win legally, maybe I could break her emotionally. The opportunity came one rainy afternoon. Sylvia called me, her voice hesitant, but gentle. "I'd like you to come over," she said. "I have something to give you." Something of hers. Her words burned. Something of hers. As if she were the gatekeeper of my mother's memory now. Still, I went. When I arrived, Sylvia handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate locket, gold worn thin by years of touch. I recognized it instantly. It had been my grandmother's, passed to my mother. She used to wear it when I was a little girl, letting me play with the clasp as I sat on her lap. I clenched it in my palm, my voice trembling. "Why do you have this?" "Because she left it for you," Sylvia said softly. "She wanted you to have it." Her words sliced through me. I had expected cruelty, smugness, triumph. But instead, she offered me kindness. And somehow, that kindness enraged me more than any arrogance would have. "You think this makes it better?" I snapped. "You think a trinket can erase the fact that she gave you everything else?" Sylvia flinched, her eyes shining. "No!" I thought you deserved this piece of her. She loved you." The sincerity in her voice unsettled me. It would have been easier if she had been my enemy. But she wasn't. She was a woman carrying her own scars, her own abandonment, and yet she was also the embodiment of everything I had lost. I left abruptly, the locket burning in my pocket. That night, I stared at it until dawn, torn between hurling it into the fire and clutching it to my chest like a relic. It felt like my mother's ghost mocking me. Meanwhile, Eric was spiraling further. One evening, he showed up drunk at my house, his face flushed, his words slurred. "We can't let her take it all," he growled. "It's ours. It should be ours." His desperation frightened me, but part of me understood. He was right. It should have been ours. Together, we began hatching darker plans. Nothing violent, at least. Not at first. Just ways to make Sylvia's life difficult. Anonymous letters slipped into her mailbox, warning her she didn't belong. Rumors whispered to her neighbors about shady past dealings. Small cracks designed to shatter the perfect calm of her life. And it worked. I saw it in her eyes the next time I visited under the guise of civility, the weariness, the tension. She looked over her shoulder now. She hesitated before answering the door. A part of me thrilled at the sight, a vindictive satisfaction blooming in my chest. But another part of me recoiled, because when I saw the tremor in her hands, I saw my own reflected there. We were both daughters scarred by the same mother, both paying the price of her choices. Hurting her didn't heal me. It only made me feel emptier. Still, Eric pushed harder. "We need to destroy the will," he said one night, his eyes wild. "Burn it, if it doesn't exist. No one can prove she gets anything." I recoiled. "That's illegal. That's dangerous," he sneered. "So what? Haven't you lost enough by playing nice?" For the first time, I saw how the rage was consuming him, turning him into someone I didn't recognize. And I realized with a sick twist of my stomach that I was on the brink of becoming the same. I had a choice: let vengeance hollow me out completely, or step back before I lost myself. But fate wasn't done with me. Because the very next day, Sylvia invited me over again, and this time, she had something else to reveal. When I walked into her living room, she handed me a faded envelope. My breath caught as I saw my mother's handwriting once more. Inside was another letter, written not to me, but to Sylvia. "My dear firstborn, I have lived with shame all my life for leaving you. But know this, my love for you never died. If I have given you my home, my possessions, it is because I want you to feel the belonging I once denied you. But I have also left behind something else, something only your sister can explain to you. The truth of our family, the truth of your father." The words blurred as Sylvia and I stared at each other, the weight of it settling between us. Our father, the man my mother had never named, the final secret buried beneath years of silence. The word father echoed in my skull like a bell tolling in an empty cathedral. For 38 years, my mother had been a fortress of silence on that subject. Whenever I asked, she'd change the subject or grow sharp, as if the very question was a betrayal. Eric and I had both learned to stop asking, to live with the gaping hole where a father's presence should have been. But now, in death, she was forcing the truth into the open. Sylvia's hands shook as she passed me the letter. Her eyes brimmed with something between fear and hope. "She said you'd know," she whispered. "Do you—" My mouth went dry. Did I? Memories flickered through me, hushed arguments I overheard as a child. My mother's face hardening whenever certain names came up, the way she avoided certain streets in town. There had always been whispers, gossip I'd overheard in the schoolyard, that my father was someone important, someone married, someone forbidden. But my mother never confirmed anything. I folded the letter carefully, my pulse pounding. "No," I admitted. "I don't know. But maybe I can find out." The quest for truth became an obsession. I scoured old photographs, letters, anything that might reveal a name. My nights were spent digging through archives, scrolling through digitized newspapers, searching for patterns. Eric refused to join me. He was too far gone in his bitterness, sneering that it didn't matter who our father was if he hadn't wanted us anyway. But to me, it mattered. Because maybe the root of all this betrayal didn't start with my mother. Maybe it started with him. And then, one rainy afternoon, I found it. An old photo tucked inside a book of poetry my mother had kept on her nightstand. The photo was creased and faded, but the image was clear enough. My mother, younger, her arm entwined with a man's. He was tall, suited, his hand resting possessively on her waist. I recognized him instantly. He was the father of one of my childhood friends. A man from a wealthy family who had owned half the businesses in town. A man who had died years ago, his reputation untarnished. I sank onto the bed, the photo trembling in my hands. My father had been a married man, a man with power, money, a family of his own. My mother had been his secret, and we, Sylvia, Eric, and I had been the collateral damage of his cowardice. Rage surged through me, hotter than anything I had felt yet. All those years of silence, all those years of watching my mother bend beneath the weight of something I couldn't name, and it was him. He had lived a full, public life while we were hidden in the shadows. He had left us with nothing. I confronted Sylvia with the photo, her face paling as she studied it. "So that's him," she murmured, her voice trembling. "I always wondered." She told me once he was powerful, that he couldn't acknowledge me. But she never said his name. We sat in silence, the enormity of it pressing down on us. Two sisters bound not just by blood, but by the betrayal of the same man. But Eric didn't see it as revelation. He saw it as opportunity. When I showed him the photo, his eyes lit with a dangerous gleam. "Do you know what this means?" he hissed. "His family owes us. They've been living high while we were scraping by. We could take this to the papers, ruin them, demand our share." The thought chilled me. Exposing the truth would tear through our town like wildfire, dragging innocent people into the wreckage. His legitimate children, my childhood friend among them, would have their lives upended. But another part of me, the vengeful part, wanted exactly that. Why should they get to live untouched while we bore the scars? The climax came sooner than I expected. A month later, there was a gathering at the town hall, a charity gala hosted by that same family. I hadn't intended to go, but Eric insisted, dragging me along under the pretense of civility. But I knew him. I saw the way he clutched the photo in his pocket like a loaded gun. The room glittered with chandeliers, silk gowns, and laughter that rang hollow in my ears. My eyes locked on the family, my father's family. His widow, regal in a sequined dress. His children, successful, smiling, adored. They had no idea that I was standing there, watching, carrying the truth that could shatter their world. Eric couldn't hold back. He raised his glass and called for silence, his voice slurred by too much champagne. "Did you all know," he shouted, "that your beloved patriarch wasn't just the saint you think he was? Did you know he had children he never claimed, that were standing right here?" Gasps rippled through the crowd, faces turning toward us. My heart pounded, my body frozen as Eric brandished the photo, waving it like a weapon. The widow's face blanched, her children murmuring in shock. The air turned electric, thick with whispers. I wanted to vanish. I wanted to scream. But most of all, I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. Because in that moment, I realized revenge had gone too far. My grief had curdled into cruelty, and I wasn't sure who I was anymore. I grabbed Eric's arm, yanking him back, my voice a hiss. "Enough, stop it," but it was too late. The damage was done. The whispers had already taken root, and nothing would silence them now. We fled the hall, Eric laughing bitterly, triumphant in his destruction. I, however, felt nothing but hollow. This wasn't justice. This was chaos, and the ghost of my mother's voice echoed in my mind, telling me that trust, once broken, is gone forever. That night, I sat alone in my car, the locket cold against my chest, and I wept until my throat was raw. For my mother, for Sylvia, for Eric, for myself, for all the lives ruined by one man's cowardice and one woman's silence. And in the end, I understood something I hadn't wanted to face. Revenge doesn't heal. It devours the inheritance, the will, the secrets. They had all been poisoned long before they reached me. And if I kept clutching them like weapons, they would destroy me too. So I made a choice to let go, to stop chasing ghosts, to stop bleeding myself dry for answers that would never bring peace. In the weeks that followed, I reached out to Sylvia again, tentatively, awkwardly, but honestly. She welcomed me with tears and open arms. Eric, however, drifted further into bitterness, refusing to forgive, refusing to heal. It broke my heart, but I couldn't save him from himself. What I could do was try to build something new from the ashes, a fragile sisterhood, a tentative peace, and perhaps, in time, forgiveness not for my mother, not for him, but for myself. Because I deserved to stop bleeding. And maybe, just maybe, love was not about inheritance, or secrets, or the lies that bound us. Maybe love was simply about choosing to stay, to face the truth, and to begin again, no matter how broken the foundation. If you've listened this far, thank you for walking through this painful journey with me. If my story has touched you, if it made you feel less alone in your own struggles with betrayal and family secrets, I'd be grateful if you could like, share, and subscribe. Leave me a comment. Tell me if you've ever uncovered a truth that changed everything. Your stories matter, too.